And from here, we're going to go to File and go to New. So when I go to New, it'll open up a part, assembly, or drawing. We want to do a part. So part is highlighted. I'll click OK. When this opens up, this is kind of a general idea of what Solidworks will look like. The two tabs that we're going to be working with today are going to be the Features tab and the Sketch tab. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and make our material. Okay, so we'll go to Sketch, and then I'm going to click Sketch up here to enable sketching mode. Okay, so there's lots of sketch items, but I want to be in the actual sketch mode to create a new sketch. So I'll click that, and if I look here, I got three different planes. My plane that I want to be on will be a plane that shows the Y going in the Y plus direction, pointing up and down, and the X will be going left and right. Okay, that is going to be my front plane. So I'm going to click this, and it will come up and show me my front plane. Notice how my Y is pointing positive and my X is pointing positive. Okay, so let's look at our print one time, and we'll see that our material is 4 inches by 4 inches by a 1/2 inch thick. Now this 1/2 inch, we're not going to make it a full 1/2 inch because the way we're going to draw it, we're going to have our profile come up the rest of the way. So what we'll do is my profile is 150 thousandths deep, so we'll come up short of the profile, and that'll make a little more sense as we go. So let's start by just making a 4 inch by 4 inch square. So what I'm going to do is I have my drawing center. Okay, so I'm going to come up here to corner rectangle. I'm going to click that. Notice how when I come to the center, it creates a dot right there at the center. Okay, so I'm going to click, and I'm going to move my mouse up, and you can get the X and Y values as close as you want. It's not critical at the moment because we're going to do something called Smart Dimension. So once you get it where you want it, left click again, and you'll have a shaded area. Okay, now this is where you can work on your mouse functions, your mouse roll wheel. If I scroll up, it starts making it smaller. Okay, but if you also notice, if I scroll down, it starts going away from my mouse. So it'll actually start cursoring or zooming in wherever I have the point of my mouse. So play with that a little bit before you keep going. Get a little comfortable with it because you'll need to know that. So I'm going to come up to Smart Dimension, and I'm actually going to come up, and if you'll notice as I get close to this line, it turns orange. So with it on the line and with it highlighted orange, I'm going to left click. It's going to dimension it. It's letting me know that this is the dimension it's going to give me. So I'm going to move it down where I can see it, and I'm going to drop it in by left clicking again. As soon as I drop it in, it wants to know the actual measurement for this block, and we said it's 4 inches. So 4 inches, and I'll hit the enter key, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the side. Now I can do this side or I can do this side. It doesn't matter as long as one of the sides, because it is parallel to each other. Alright, I usually kind of stay close to the origin, so I'll highlight my line, click it, I drop my dimension, and it's going to be also 4 inches. I'm going to hit enter. So here's where you want to get good with your mouse. So I'm going to scroll up to zoom out, put my mouse over the block a little bit, and I'm going to scroll down to zoom up. Alright, so that's it. We have our base block right here. So I'm going to hit the check mark because I'm done. Now in order to make my part a solid or three-dimensional, I have to leave the sketch. Okay, so when I hit exit sketch, it goes to a blue line. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my Features tab, and I'm going to go to Extrude a Base Boss. Okay, when I click that, it automatically goes into isometric mode, okay, or a view. If it does not go into isometric view, you need to come over and actually click on the lines of your part, and it will activate to that sketch. Okay, it still might not go into isometric mode, but it will turn yellow like you want it to do. Now if it does not rotate and you want it to on your mouse that you zoom up and back or zoom in and out on, if you push and hold the wheel and rotate, it will show the sides. Okay? I try not to move very much because I want to make sure that my orientation stays right. I want my Y pointing up and I want my X pointing to the right. So we said that we're using 1/2 inch material, but I only want the square part of it to come up a 1/2 inch minus 150 thousandths. So here's the cool thing. Either I can pull out a calculator and I can type in 1/2 inch minus 150 thousandths, which would be 350 thousandths, or I can let the software do the work for me. So I'm going to come right here where it says my dimension right here, my distance, or depth, I'm sorry, and I'm going to click it, and I'm going to do 0.5 minus 0.150, enter. Now the first time I hit enter, you see how it calculates it for me, but it has not yet turned it into a solid model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit enter again, or I can click this arrow, or I can click that arrow. I usually hit enter, and that's going to turn it into a solid. Now remember, with your scrolling wheel, push and hold, and you can rotate it to see how it looks. Alright? Well, here's the thing. I got to get back to my orientation. I can't be on an angle. I got to be nice and square to the top of my part. So there's two ways to do it. You can come up to the surface, you can left click on it, and it will pull up a window here that says normal to. If it does not say normal to, we'll show you a different way. If it does say normal to, you just click it and you're ready to go. Okay, I usually click off of it. But if you're on an angle, okay, and it's not good, so it's not how you want it, I'm going to go up to view orientation. So what I do is I get it close so I make sure I'm on the right surface. I click view orientation, and then I'm going to click on my box. And if you'll notice, as I move around the box, it has different views. Okay, here's my isometric, and then I want to go to my front view. So I'll click that. Notice how I'm nice and square. My Y points positive, my X points to the right. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to start making this profile. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to move this profile over 30 thousandths so that I will have a separate line right here, and that, like I said, that'll look a little, it'll make more understanding as we draw it. So to do this correctly, we're going to do it in the right steps. I have this surface selected. I'm going to go to sketch. I'm going to hit sketch again. Okay, so right now I am on this surface. I'm going to go to line. Okay, so I'm using line. I'm going to left click. I'm not going to left click right here. See, if I left click right there, I'm on the edge of the material. That's not where I want it to be. I'm going to come in a little bit. I'm going to left click again. And see how it's making a line right here? So I'm going to come up. I'm going to click again. And I'm going to start coming over. Okay. Now notice how I'm doing nice straight right angles. And if we look at our print, okay, we're going to get to right here. And if we look at our print, I can swap back and forth and this will stay active. I have a radius right here. Now the right way to do this, okay, it's going to take a little bit of practice, is when I go away from it, it's a line. How do I get it to be a radius? So what I'm going to do, if you see the blue square, I'm going to go back to the blue square, and if you look at the eraser, you see there's a yellow circle. That means when I move away from this point, I'm going to be drawing an arc. Now if you go the wrong direction, your arc will go the wrong direction as well. You just need to come back to the square again and then come back to it again. So I'm going to go the wrong way. Okay, so that's not how I want to do it, right? That's not where I want to be. So I'm going to come back to it, come off of it, and then it's going to fix it. Okay, it's all about what direction you want to go. So notice how I have my solid dot lines. So if I go too far, that's not going to work. So I want to keep it with those dotted lines. Okay, now it doesn't matter how far you put it. I usually try to keep it within the material. And then I'm going to click, left click again, and then I'm back to going straight. So I'm going to click again, come away from it. I got a radius right here, so I'm going to come back to it. I've got my circle. I'm going to go down and to the left, and notice how it did it correctly. Okay, I don't want to click right now because that's going to give me some troubles as later on. Okay, so I want to come up until I got my dotted lines to where if you look at the A, it says A90. That's where I want it to be. So I'm going to click. I'm going to come across. I'm going to click. We'll look at our print one more time. So we've got our curve right here. We're going to come over. We're going to do an arc right here. We're going to come down, and we're going to close the profile. Once we close the profile, it's going to shade my geometry. Okay, so I come back up to it. So notice how I got my arc. You don't want to come all the way down. Okay, just kind of get it close. I got both dotted lines. My A is at 90. I'm going to click. I'm going to come down, but if you watch as I come down, there's going to be a dotted line that pops up. There it is. Okay, so if I click up here, I'm going to be making an angled line there, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to come down until I have, if you notice, I have a 90 next to my pencil, and I have a dotted line going to my start point. So I'm going to click again, and then I'm going to come over until my point highlights, and I'm going to click one more time. So I have successfully closed this profile. Okay, that's good. So all I'm going to do now is I need to go through and I need to dimension it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting this 30 thousandths away from that right there. So I'm going to go to Smart Dimension. I'm going to click it, and then I'm going to highlight my geometry. Okay, notice how it wants me to measure my geometry. I'm not going to do that yet. And then I'm going to come to the edge of my part, and notice how it became orange as well. It's going to highlight my part. I'm going to click it one more time, and then I'm going to move off my material. So it says it's 220 thousandths. I want to make that 30 thousandths. So we're going to drop it, and then we're going to type in 30 thousandths and hit enter, and you'll watch my geometry. It's going to move over 30 thousandths within the part. Okay, so my profile is 30 thousandths away from the edge. I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom. I'm going to click my bottom, and then I'm going to click the bottom of my geometry. I'm going to click it. I'm going to drag it over, and I'm going to drop it. And I'm also going to make that 30 thousandths. Okay, you can hit enter, or you can click the check mark. I usually hit enter. So notice how these two lines have become constrained. They are now fully constrained. So if I'm blue, okay, I'm going to hit escape real quick. If they're blue, I can move everything. Okay, I can move everything up, down, back, forth. That's not what I want to do. Okay, I want to constrain my geometry before I turn it into a solid model. So back into Smart Dimensions. Let's look at our print. So we're going to constrain this dimension and that dimension next. Okay, so I've got 3 inches, 937 thousandths. So let's go back to our Solidworks. I'm going to select. Remember, do not select the material. Now, if it's too close, you can always zoom up. Make it as easy as you want. Here's the side of my material. Here's the side of the geometry I just made. I'll zoom out just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to come over until I see that line. I'm going to click it. I'm going to come over, and I'm going to click that line. Okay, now you can do it either or. I can do the one that I currently have selected. Okay, we said we were going to do it that way, so let's do that way. So right now, when I select that wall, I'm going to drag my dimension out here and drop it. And that's going to be my 3 inches, 937. I'm going to hit enter. and that moved it up pretty close. But if you'll notice, my geometry is within the part. That's going to make it a lot easier when you go to our CAM software. So I'll do the same thing. I'm going to click on the left side of my geometry and then click the right side of my geometry, and I'm going to come up here, I'm going to drop it, and that's going to be 3 inches, 937. I'm going to hit enter. Okay, so we're looking pretty good right now. So, but if you'll notice something, when I typed in 3 inches 937, it's saying 3 inches 940. So what we're going to do is we're going to constrain the rest of our profile, and then I'm going to show you how to make it show what you want to see. Alright, so let's look at this point right here. I got a radius, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my radius. Make sure Smart Dimension's active. Okay, click my radius, and then I'm going to come out right here. Okay, so whenever I come over here, let's make sure that's right. I'm going to type in 1 inch 181 thousandths. Okay, so what that does, usually I like for my dimension to look a little bit different, but that'll be fine. Okay, so that tells me that I'm 1 inch 181 thousandths. Because if I look over here, that is what it actually is. Okay, so next thing I want to do is I want to constrain these 2 legs of my geometry, and then I'll be almost done. Alright, so I got Smart Dimension active. Again, let's look at our print. So from the side of my geometry to the side of that leg is 1 inch 969 thousandths. So again, I'm selecting the geometry, not the material. I'm going to come over and I'm going to select my other leg, and I'm going to drag it and drop it into view. So that was going to be 1 inch 969 thousandths. I can hit select, and you'll notice that now I've constrained that leg. Last but not least, we're going to, remember, don't select here. That's my material. I want to select on the geometry. So I'm going to select my geometry. I'm going to select that distance right there. I'm going to drop it in there. This will stay here. I'm going to go back to my print. I see that that distance needs to be 984 thousandths. So I'll go back and I'm going to go 984 thousandths, enter. Alright, so I have all my walls constrained. I have that radius constrained. Now I just have to constrain 2 radiuses and my profile's done. So I'm going to simply click on the radius. That's how I usually like my radiuses to look. And this, on my blueprint, it shows that this radius is 312 thousandths and that radius is 312 thousandths. So I'll select both of them. Okay, 312 thousandths, enter. I'll select this one, 312 thousandths, and then I'll hit enter. Okay, so now that I'm done, I'm going to hit close dialog, and if you look here, everything is fully constrained. You want to be fully constrained before you attempt to create 3-dimensional properties, because you will wind up with errors. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I have to exit my sketch, because I cannot make 3-dimensional features while in a sketching mode. So exit sketch, and if you'll notice, my sketch 2 is selected already. If it's not selected, click on it. I'm going to go to features. I'm going to do an extrude boss base. When I click on it, notice how it didn't rotate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push my my rolling zoom in and zoom out mouse. I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to rotate it around so you can see it a little better. Okay, so Solidworks by default will remember my last variable that I put in there. So let's look at our blueprint, and we'll see that we want that profile. It says deep on this one, so we want it to be that tall. So the mill profile is 150 thousandths. So let's go back here. We'll type in 150 thousandths. I'm going to hit enter, and if you'll watch right here when I hit enter, it goes down a little bit, and then if I hit enter one more time, it creates the solid. Okay? So this is going to help us out a lot whenever we go to do our cam cycle, because it's going to cut all the way around my part like I want it to do. Okay? With very little effort anywhere else. Okay? It's going to be it's a time saver. Okay, so we're almost done. So again, let's left click on the surface. Let's go normal 2. If that doesn't work, don't forget, you have your view orientation. You have to do that so that when you make your drawing or your sketches, that they are right. Okay? So I usually click off of it one time, and then I'm going to go to sketch. I'm going to go to sketch, and then I'm going to go up to here, and this is my surface I'm going to be working on. And I'm going to make a box. I'm going to make my I'm going to make this pocket right here. Now, one thing I want to do that's going to help me before I start is I want to know what the width of my box is, my pocket, divided by 2. Because when I go to constrain this left side and this bottom side, if you'll notice, the dimensions are called out to the center of the pocket. Okay? So in order to do that correctly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this dimension right here and subtract half the pocket. So let's pull up our calculator. I'm going to type in 1 inch, 968 thousandths and 5/10. Okay? And we're going to divide that by 2. Okay? And we'll go to the third place decimal, which is 984 thousandths. Okay? So we'll leave that up. That's going to be our dimension right there. So we'll minimize that. Let's go back to Solidworks and let's make a square. Okay, now we're not going to do the line where we made our arcs this time. We're going to do a little bit different so I can show you a different technique. So I'm going to go back to my corner rectangle. I'm going to click in space, okay, and then I'm going to bring it up and just click again. So once I have that in place, I'm going to go back to Smart Dimension. Remember, do not come off your material. You want to come off the geometry that we did. We'll zoom up just a little bit. There we go. So the first thing I want to do is I want to click the side of my geometry. I'm going to click the side of my new geometry. I'm going to take my dimension. I'm going to drag and drop it. Now if we look at our print, it is 1 inch, 377 thousandths minus 984. Alright? So let's type in 1 inch, 377 thousandths minus 0.984. Now I can do it on my calculator, or I can go right into my software and do it that way. So instead of doing that, let's let our software tell us what it should be. So 1 inch, 377 minus 984. 1 inch, 377 thousandths, I know it sounds a bit redundant, minus, no spaces, 984 thousandths. When I hit enter, it pulls it over, 390, okay, 3, just like our calculator shows. Alright? So we'll hit, we'll keep that up there just in case. Let's minimize it. So I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom here. I'm going to select the bottom. I'm going to select the bottom of my geometry. Okay. Notice how it's the bottom of my geometry and not the entire length of the part. And I'm going to do the same thing. So let's look at our print. It's 2 inches, 755 thousandths. 2 inches, 755 thousandths minus 0.984, which is half the diameter of my pocket. Okay, half the width, half the height, however you want to put it. Okay, so next thing I want to do is I want to actually tell my sides how big they are. So here's where we're just going to pick a side. You can pick the left or right. Okay, let's pick the right side. I'm just going to drag and drop, and that's going to be the 1 inch, 968 thousandths and 5 tenths. Okay, we'll do the same thing. We'll click down here. We'll drag it and drop it. Same, it's going to be the same dimension both ways. So 1 inch, 968 thousandths and 5 tenths. Okay. Now we went to the fourth place decimal on this, and it's still showing 2 place decimals. Okay, so we want to verify and make sure it is right. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to the bottom right hand side of our screen, and I have something called my units. Okay, so I'm going to hit the arrow. I'm going to go to Edit Document Units. Okay. At this page, we're going to go to Length Units, Decimals. I'm going to just click in the box, click the down arrow. I want to go to the 4th place decimal. So I'm going to click the 4th place decimal. Okay, that's good. That's what we want. And if you'll watch these values, okay, let's see if I can get one of them on the screen. There we go. Watch these values when I hit OK. You'll notice that they are all correct. 9685, 9685. Now that we've changed that, it should stay like that from now on every time you open up Solidworks. Okay? If not, you know how to do it now. Doesn't take very much time. Okay? So we verified that everything looks very good. So let's exit our sketch. Let's go back to our features. Okay, now we're not going to do an extrude boss, we're going to do an extrude cut because it's a pocket we're going into the material. So make sure sketch 3 is highlighted, and we're going to hit extrude cut. Now it's still not moving around, so I'm going to use my mouse to rotate it so you can see that it is coming from the top of my surface down into the part. Okay, that's why it's very critical that you know what surface of the part you're cutting onto. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my blueprint, look for something on here that tells me the depth. There it is. So the depth of this pocket is 196 thousandths deep. Okay, so that's what we'll type right here where it says the depth. I'm going to type in 196 thousandths. I'm going to hit enter. You see that it did change a little bit, went a little bit deeper, and I'm going to hit enter again. Alright, so I have my pocket. However, it does not have radiuses in the corners. So without going to sketch, we're going to use our modeling keys or hotkeys to make the corners. So I'm going to go to right here to fillet, and I'm going to click fillet. Okay, I just want to do a standard fillet. This is going to be my size. So if we go back to my print, I want to see what radius needs to be right here. So if I look in here, I see that I have 312 thousandths radiuses typical for places. So all the way around will be 312 thousandths. So we'll come back here. I'm going to type in 312 thousandths. I'm going to hit enter. And then what I'm going to have to do, this is where you're going to get your practice in with the rotating and scrolling, is I'm going to come in pretty close because I don't want to click that. I don't want to click this. And I don't want to click that. I want to click the line by itself. Once I have it, I can scroll out. I can rotate. I want to click just the line. Okay? If you click the face or something like that, you can either hit cancel and start over real fast, or you can hit in here and you can delete one of those areas. Okay, I can hit delete. Alright, so let's keep rotating. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to rotate my part. I'm going to zoom back in. Just the corner. Just the corner. Okay, so I have all 3 of my corners selected. See if I can get it to where you guys can see it. Alright, so with all these selected, I'm going to hit enter or check OK. And just like that, I have put the radiuses into the corners. So that pocket is completely constrained, and it is formed with the corner radius fillets. Alright? So the last thing we have on here, so we're almost done, is we have our holes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click, I'm going to go normal to, okay, and then I'm going to go to sketch, and I'm going to start my sketch right here. Okay, so what's going to happen is I want to do a point because I'm going to have to revolve my holes in a circle around a point. So we're going to do this very carefully because this is where a lot of people get a little lost. I'm going to select point. I'm going to select it in my pocket. So I have a point, but I'm not going to use smart dimensioning. This point, if I look at my blueprint, is right in the center of the pocket. So we're going to come up 2 inches, 755 thousandths in Y, and we're going to come over 1 inch, 377 thousandths in X. So I'll go to my X. That's going to be 1 inch, 377 thousandths. I'm going to hit tab, and then I'm going to go 2 inches, 755 thousandths, and then I'm going to hit enter. So now this is fixed right there in the middle of the pocket. I will hit OK, and then I'm going to draw a circle. Now we'll do this slowly so you guys can see. I'm actually going to zoom up on it just a little bit to help you guys out. So I'm going to go circle. Now notice when I cross paths with the point, I have a blue line coming up. Okay, that means I am perfectly vertical with this line. Now it happens either way. Okay, that just helps you with your positioning. Well, we want that dotted line showing. We're going to click. Once we click, then we're going to move. And as we move, it starts making a radius. Now you can get as close as you want. I usually just eyeball it. So I'm going to click one more time to drop it in. Okay? So now I want a smart dimension. So I'm going to go to smart dimensioning. Let's click on our diameter of our hole. And let's drop it right there. Well, let's look and see what the diameter of our hole is. It says we have an 1/8 inch hole, so 125 thousandths. So let's go in here and we're going to type in 125 thousandths and hit enter. Okay? We also need to know the distance from the center to the center. Okay? Center of the pocket to the center of the hole. We do have a location of 787 thousandths that we need to do. Okay? So let's go back here. We're going to select the middle of the pocket, and then we're going to select the center of our hole. We're going to drag and drop our dimension, and that's going to be the 787 thousandths, and I'm going to hit enter. Okay? Good. So let's hit our check mark because we're done. Now what we have to do is we have to take this and revolve it around this point until we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 holes equally spaced. Okay? So this is actually pretty cool, pretty easy. I'm going to come up here to the linear sketch and hit the drop down menu, and I'm going to go to circular pattern. Okay? So the first thing I want to do is it's wanting a location. So if you'll notice, this is highlighted blue. This is wanting to know the location of where I'm pivoting. So I'm going to come up here and highlight this location right here. So when I pick that right there, it knows that that's where I'm going to pivot. I'm going to come down here to entities to pattern. I'm going to click in here and I'm going to hit delete. Okay, because that's not what I want to pattern. I want to pattern the hole. So make sure that this is red. Come up and click the hole. I usually click the side of the hole, but if you see my symbol, it does show the diameter. When I click it, okay, that's my arc. We'll select my point one more time. There we go. So we might have to do that in reverse. We might have to click entities to pattern, click my circle, and then click my point. But either way, this is what you should look at. Okay? So we have equal spacing. I want to do 8. And when I hit enter, you see that I have 8. Now, 8 is also including the hole that we're making a pattern from. Okay? If I want to do more, I could do 10, 12, 13, however you want. Okay? But on this print, it says 8. Equal spacing, 360. So you notice my X location and my Y location look very familiar. That is the center point. So if you don't want to click that point, you can always type in the locations and then click in the box and select that arc. Okay, multiple ways you can do it, but this is what we're looking for. I'm going to hit OK one more time. There it is. So I'm going to rotate this so you can see it. Notice how the holes are at the bottom of the pocket. If you rotate it and your holes are up on this surface, you'll have to start over and move your sketch. Okay? So I'm going to orientate it correctly. There we go. And now I need to exit my sketch because we're going to extrude cut these holes into that pocket. So exit sketch. We're going to go to features. Notice I do have my sketch selected. I'm going to go to extrude cut. Alright, so we're going to rotate it so we can see it. We see that it is going to go into my hole, or into the pocket, and we need to find out how deep into the pocket it's going to go. So let's go back to our blueprint. There it is. I have my 1/8 inch holes are going 196 thousandths deep. Okay? So I'm going to come back and I'm going to type in 196. If it's already there, that's fine. I'm just going to retype it in. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to hit enter one more time. There it is. So that's what we want right there. Okay? So what I'm going to do is we have this entire part modeled. Okay? We have our base, we have our profile that is in, so that way it'll cut all the way around it. We have our pocket, and then we have our holes. So the next thing we want to do is we want to save this part. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to put it on my desktop because I need to find it. And I'm going to put it, or I'll save it as, we'll save it as a milling part. We'll say milling 2. And then I'm going to hit Save. Okay? So this part is now on my desktop.